Okay, hello class. Um, Today we're gonna have a tutorial of actually painting this painting that we have. Now I've sketched out this little drawing that has two birds and they're on a branch. They're perched on a branch, and the background is not very complex. It's quite a simple background which is out of focus. Um, Now, the tutorial will not cover the bird here, this kingfisher, but the concept of painting this is basically the same. So I will go to the extent where I'm going to just paint this one here, the branch, and this robin. Okay? So, um, but the concept of painting the kingfisher will be the same, and I hope you understand the concept of which I'm going to introduce to you in the steps of painting uh, objects without an outline. So now I've done the sketch for this. Now before I proceed, what I like to do is just recap of what I've actually taught in the previous tutorial of how to paint. Alright, and the concept is basically very much the same as the one I've taught you guys with the sphere. Yeah, let me bring this up. Yeah. Alright, the simple method for painting procedure, number one, is usually to establish or create a shape, solid shape, using any selection tool you know. Now I think from the previous tutorials we've had, let's just bring this up. We've got the marquee tool. Yeah, the marquee tool has either the square or the elliptical. Yes, don't know if I spelled elliptical right. Okay, and then the other one is the lasso tool. So the lasso tool, you've got the free one which you can kind of drag around freely, make very organic lines, and the other one which is the polygonal, which makes straight lines. Right, so let's go to this. So you've got your marquee tools here, the square, rectangular, and the elliptical, and then you've got the lasso tool, which is this one, and also the polygonal. Okay, I'm going to introduce one to you today, which is called the pen tool. Alright, so you can create it with the pen tool as well, and convert the pen tool into any form at all, any form. And convert the whatever you've drawn with the pen tool into a selection. So we will do that later on, but let's recap on how to paint this. Alright, then we paint in the shadow using a brush on multiply mode. Okay, you need to change. This method is painting all of the things in one layer. Then we will paint in the main light, followed by the bounce or reflected light on color dodge mode. Alright, and then finally we do some details. Okay, so let's do this now with a simple object like the sphere. Alright, so we've got the sphere one on this layer, and I'm going to create another one and call it sphere 2, and I just recreate this whole thing for you. Okay, this whole sphere for you. Okay, so let's just make a sphere. I'm holding down the shift key as I drag out this elliptical marquee, because if I don't, I will get an oval. Alright, which is fine unless an oval is what you want, or you want an egg. Yeah, so if you're creating a sphere, just drag it out by holding the shift key, reposition it by clicking inside. You cannot reposition clicking it outside the sphere. Click inside. Let's choose a different color, perhaps a green sphere. Now fill it up by holding down alternate, pressing delete to fill in with your foreground color. Yeah, hold down alternate, press delete to fill with the foreground color. Then Ctrl D to release the marquee, or just simply click somewhere else and it will release. Then choose a brush which has a soft edge. I'm going to go all the way to the top and choose one of these brushes here, perhaps. Shape Dynamics, I want pen pressure. Actually, be wary, if this appears there might be something wrong with the tablet. But I think mine is because if I don't tap it, whenever I start using the mouse, it reoccurs, and when I move my Wacom again, my tablet pen, the sign disappears. It has detected my Wacom. So now I will select the color of the background, because usually, we want to select colors from the environment that reflects light or shadow even. Yeah, we don't really like using a gray, because shadows aren't really gray, they actually have a sort of color. So before I start painting in the shadow, the core shadow, yeah, as explained in class, you want to lock the alpha first. Oh, it seems that there is a spacing going on, so let's change to be more solid. Okay, hardness at 0 because you want it really soft. Now change this to multiply because it's shadow. So we are doing right now, if you refer to this point, we're doing this because we've created the solid shape. Now we're doing this. So multiply, let's choose the purple here, and then just slowly brush. Okay, it's probably a bit too much. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to darken the bottom bit because it's closer to the surface, so therefore brush is not very good. It seems that it's not as smooth as I want it to be, but basically I'm trying to create a core shadow here. Now what has happened is I find that the sphere, there's a bit too much shadow that I've done. So what I'm going to do is, I find that there's still a spot of original color. I'm going to select that, change this back to normal, and just dab lightly to restore the original color, because you want a spherical form, right? Now I'm quite satisfied with the shadow already. I'm going to go to color dodge to create the main light. I'm going to select the light blue, maybe lighten it a little bit more, and make my brush smaller and dab this area here to create the main light. So this sphere does not seem to be a very smooth sphere. It's quite diffuse, the reflection. Okay, because as you know, a more reflective an object, the shinier an object, it means that the more sharp the highlight, the shinier the object. The more blurred the highlight, the more diffuse the object is. That means it's not very smooth. I'm going to choose a white color because I feel that if I go on color dodging this area, it will become overexposed. So I'm going to choose white and go to normal. And create the balance, the remainder of the highlight actually. Yeah, because sometimes when you keep color dodging, it becomes overexposed. It doesn't look very nice. Okay, so sometimes you need to manually paint in the highlight with the white. Yeah, so I'm quite happy with how it's looking. Usually the highlight of a sphere is not right at the edge, it's slightly away from the edge if you want to create something like this. Then choose color dodge again and choose the color purple because we're going to create now the bounce light. Okay, so just to create that three-dimensional form. Okay. So now there you have it. You probably touch up a bit more, just multiply and touch up the bottom bit a little bit more. Okay, oh, it's a bit too much, too harsh shadow. You want it to be as smooth as possible. Yeah. Okay. So the concept that I'm painting every object in this tutorial is about the same. It's the same as what we've done here with the two spheres. Okay? Now, I'm going to just move on to this painting, this sketch that I have. I traditionally like to start with a sketch. Doesn't need to be very neat. As you can see, I can still see some lines. Unless you want to keep the lines, then probably I suggest you refine the lines, make it a bit neater. But if not, this will do as a guideline. So the sketch layer is very important to lock this because you don't want, you're not really using it at the end. Yeah, so neither do you want to start painting on it. So change this to multiply mode first so that you can see through your painting. Alright, lock this. Now in your background layer, that's where you want to create a background for this. Now how do we create a background? Now when we look at the photos that I've taken off the internet, you notice that when we photograph birds, The photographers tend to like to photograph them with a blurred background so that there is all the focus of detail on the birds, yeah, all the feathers, the textures. The blurred background in these photographs tend to bring out the animal a lot better. And let's look at the robin, the same as well, yeah, it's that blurred background. Now we want to recreate that kind of blurred background that we see in these photographs, okay? And we want a green background, okay? So let's choose a green and fill it up with a green. Now we're going to do it with a gradient first. A gradient tool is here, this square box here. A gradient basically means a gradual change of one color to another, okay? You've got some presets here which shows that obviously you don't need just two colors, you can even add colors. How do you add colors on a gradient? You approach this colored bar here with your cursor. You see the hand approaching, you can tap and another color will come out. How do you change the color? By double tapping on the square, and this will appear and you can select your color, okay? But I really do want only two colors. One which is a dark green, so I'm going to double tap, choose a dark sort of green, and I hope that through this tutorial you try and choose the same colors I'm using so that you avoid any confusion that might occur, like discrepancy of colors and all that. Okay, so I'm going to choose a light green on one side, a yellowish green, because the sun is coming from one side. So I'm quite happy with this gradient. Now how do I apply a gradient? I just simply drag from one end to another, yeah. Now I want it to have more dark area than light, so I'm just going to start from the middle of the artwork and try it again. I think I'm quite happy with this, yeah. So it's basically, you can go as much time as you like until you get the amount you want, okay. So obviously if you go a very short distance, the gradient will be harsher, because it means that you're going to start with dark green here and end with light green here. If you want to spread it across a longer area, it's smoother, right? Okay, now in order to get that kind of a bokeh out of focus effect, we want to choose different colors, add different colors here. So how do I start off? I hold down my alternate key, select a green, and then probably go to the color palette and readjust so that I get a different green, increase my brush size, because you see the blotches of colors are quite big, right? They're like big blotches of colors, and you want to do that. So 15%, probably 20. So you want to do one here, a bit there, down here. Then change the color a little bit here and there. You might want to change that back to multiply and normal also. Probably a bit of a yellow on top, yeah. Change the color of the size of the brush too. Bit of yellow, yeah. There could be something in the background, because if you look at these photographs, it seems that there is like, you know, like a blue here, an orange here. Some photographs look like there's a branch behind, the kingfisher ones. You see, there seems to be like objects behind, and brown, probably a piece of wood, some leaves. So you have to kind of imagine yourself there's something. So you do it with a bit more focus, a bit more understanding of what you're trying to paint. Probably I'm choosing a brown now. Probably there's a piece of wood behind, coming through the trees. Yeah. I'm going to make the brush a bit smaller. Probably there could have been a branch here that had a highlight. Yeah. Maybe a bit of blue would be nice even. Yeah, dark blue color. Something like this. I want to generally make the bottom area darker. Now it's kind of even out. So I'm just going to go to multiply. Increase the brush size and just darken the bottom bit again, yeah, because I really want to make sure that it looks like the light is coming from the top. And then I'm going to use color dodge, change the color to the color of the sun, which is like a yellowish color, yeah. and have some areas that have light. Okay, so I'm quite happy with what I have already, and that will be my background. So I'm done with the background. Very simple. Okay, now what we're going to do is move on to paint the branch. Okay, with the branch we're going to do, again, we go back to this. The first step, establish or create a solid shape. Now how are we going to do for something so organic? We can't do it with, well, you could do it with a polygonal tool. Yeah, go up, zigzag, zigzag. That could be fine. And if you ask me, oh, which way is faster? It depends. If you can move with the polygonal tool very fast, it's fine. But I feel like I want to use a brush, a solid brush, something like this here. Yeah, that looks like this. Alright, I'm going to increase this to 100%, no pen pressure opacity, normal, and I'm going to choose a brown color. I've got some references of some twigs, right, which I will bring into Photoshop. Like for example this one, bring into Photoshop, open in Photoshop, Control A, Control C, paste it in here just as a reference guide. Just put it somewhere on the top, just as a reference guide as I paint. So I'm going to create a new layer above the background layer and name this twig, right? And then I'm going to choose this, press B, get back to my brush mode. Now what color am I going to paint this branch? The highlight color, the shadow color. Usually we want to go somewhere mid-range, so since you have a photograph, you might as well just pick from the colors here. Yeah, so probably a mid-brown would be nice, right? And then increase the brush size, and I'm going to just try and paint within the line. You don't have to really follow your sketch 100%, it's just a rough sketch anyway. And it's a stem after all. You can be quite organic with it. Unless you're keeping the outline, then yeah, you have to try and paint within the line. So yeah. Now why did I change just now? You might be thinking, why did I change my sketch mode to multiply, right? If I unlock this, you see it's on multiply, because if I don't and I put it on normal, then I can't see it becomes the blue that I painted it with. So I can't really see through where I'm painting. Now I'm going to lower the opacity of my sketch a little bit more so that I can see more of what I'm painting. I'm going to lower it down to about 25% where I can still see the line, but it's light enough so that it doesn't distract my painting. So I'm going to lock this again, go back to my twig layer, add in some details, like some extra twigs that are sticking out. Right, I want it to have like this branch to have like a very harsh feel, so that the shape of it, you know, contrasts, the shape of the sharp edge contrasts with the delicate looking, very graceful, cute little birds that are perched on it, kind of like saying that, you know, the forest is a harsh environment, and you know, yet cute little things like that can survive in it. So you want kind of I want to create that kind of a contrast, visual contrast in terms of shape. Okay, what you do next usually for a twig like this, I won't paint the shadows first. What you need to paint next is actually the textures. You look at a piece of wood, it has a lot of textures. I'm not talking about the shadow, I'm talking about the texture. You have some which are like grayish and then it turns brown. Let's look at the photographs where, you know, you have lichen growing, some kind of plant or fungus, algae. So these are textures that you want to paint in. So it's brown, and then the outer bark is revealed where, you know, it's kind of ash color, green. You have like lichen again. So you want to paint those in. Yeah. So I'm going to just darken the brown slightly. Lock the alpha before you start painting, because if you don't lock the alpha, you paint out of the shape that you have already painted. You lock the alpha so that, you know, you get like this. You can paint out and it doesn't go out of the shape. Then you paint in some textures. Probably I paint like a lot of brown down here. Yeah. And when you're making textures on organic objects, don't be like dash dash dash. Don't evenly space out things. I mean, try and be as organic as possible. Try and be random. Yeah, which I know is very difficult at first, but you've got to try. Yeah. So yeah, you see there's no systematic thing unless certain living things do have some systematic patterns, then yes, but for a branch I think not. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's enough brown. Then probably some lichen, which is like a light greenish color. You want some of that, grayish, greenish. Yeah, so you kind of have that a little bit here, on the branch, probably somewhere here. Yeah, bigger spots, smaller spots. So you have to train your arm to be able to move, your hand to be able to move like this, random. Okay, so I think I'm quite happy with the kind of texture that I already have, and now we can start the shadow. So for the shadow, I think I'm gonna just start with a brush that has some sort of a texture. I think this one is quite nice. Now what's the color of the shadow I'm gonna paint with? A green, because the environment is generally green. So I'm gonna go to change it to multiply, lower the opacity because I don't want a too harsh of a shadow at the beginning. Now before I begin, let's break down this brush and try to figure out where the shadow goes, where the bounce light is, where is the main light. Okay, so generally you start by thinking about where the highlights would be. The highlights I'm going to now paint with orange color. Alright, let's use a solid brush for this. I created a new layer just to demo to you, you don't need to do it. But let's say the main light is coming from here. So on the twig, I think the highlight would be very strong here. It faces this area, and then probably this branch won't get as much unless it kind of bends forward. Then you've got some highlight here, and then this one it faces backwards, again highlight, and then we'll highlight again. This would catch a little bit, and then a little bit more here and here. So these are the highlight areas which I think will catch the main light, right? Then the bounce light, which I will mark now with a green color because I'm going to use a green, might come off on this side, maybe on the bottom. Where is this bounce light coming from in terms of the forest? You know, the forest has many things like leaves around this branch that will reflect back green light. Yeah, if the leaves are glossy, they would probably emit a green sort of light back to this object, right? And then you will have the shadow, which I will paint with the blue. So it's in the core of the branch probably. Yeah, like this main area here, some here, bottom. So this is our plan. This is how we're going to dissect the plant, the branch. So I'm going to switch this off. I will keep that in mind. Use this brush and paint in the shadow now. Increase the brush size. Lower the opacity down. To even lower actually. Okay, and then start painting in the shadow. Starting from the bottom up, sweeping upwards because the bottom will be darker, so you want to sweep upwards and slowly, gradually let go of your icon so that it can build up shadow, right? It's okay if you're painting towards the edge because the color dodge will actually lighten the area back up, right? But try and keep it within the area, the core of the branch, right? Okay, move up, make your brush smaller as you move up the branch. Yeah, already you can see that the branch is beginning to take form, right? Okay, I think it's quite enough. You don't want to darken it so much till it burns and you lose the nice texture that you've created. Okay, now what we're going to do next is the highlight. So the highlight I will create with the lime green, or if you know the color of the light that you want, choose a light yellow perhaps. Change this to color dodge, and then in the top area maybe you can increase the opacity a little bit more. Yeah. Sometimes when you're painting, once in a while you can switch off the sketch actually. Just switch off the eye so that you can see what you're painting more clearly. Yeah. So creating highlights here, here. Probably it twists and bends back this way. Alright. And it's up to you to create highlights wherever, but I mean, be selective. Don't just create it systematically. Like if you do a highlight here and then you space it out further, and you do another highlight here, it will look too systematic. You want it to be quite organic still. Okay, probably a bit of light here. That should be it, right? And then now for the bounce light. So the bounce light, you can just pick a green from the environment and then paint the side. Oops, sorry. Underneath. And I think we're quite done. So yeah, there you have it. You can even add in some details, right? But you don't want too much detail that it steals the attention away from the birds. So just a little bit of detail with a solid brush. Select yellow again. You want to take opportunity of some of the textures you've created, right? So for example, you want to make this look like it's kind of embossed out. So I'm just retracing some parts so you can create that kind of texture. Zoom out. Yeah, okay, so I think it's enough. And so we are done with the brush. We can throw away this reference. Yeah, so I do bring in occasionally references, and this one is the guide that I started off with, so I'm going to throw this away. So we're left with the twig, oops, sorry, and the background. Alright, you can switch on your sketch again, because the next thing we're going to move to is painting the birds. Yeah. Okay, so now we are going to do the robin. So the method of which we're going to create the solid is going to be a new method that I will be showing you guys, and it doesn't involve the first two tools that I've previously shown you. So in order to do that, let's create a new layer first, okay, and just rename the layer as Robin. And what we're going to use is a pen tool, which is located right here, right above this T, which is for text. So you see this pen is like a ballpoint, no, it's like an ink pen icon. Choose that pen tool. Okay, I'm going to zoom into the bird a little bit so that I can see where I'm drawing. So I'm going to retrace the shape roughly. Now, in order to create a really smooth shape, it is advisable to keep your points down. This is what we call points, okay? And notice that when I click, I do not let go of the mouse. I drag out in the direction that I want. I'm going to the right hand side. I drag it out, and you see these two handlers coming out. I call them beziers. They come by many other names. One of them is handlers. I don't know, there are a few others which other lecturers might call it differently, but Anyway, we just call it headless, easier to remember for now. Then I'm going to create somewhere here so that I can create a curve right over the face area. Another one, you can't get too close, especially the longer the handless, the further away you need to put the next point, because if you put it too near, you might get a little bump like this, which you don't want. Okay, so further a little bit, so you have to kind of take a lot of practice and adjust. But don't worry, if you create a shape you're not quite happy with, you can still adjust. So I'm going to clicked on the last one, so it goes went full circle. Yeah, now it's a bit like a potato shape, so go ahead and create a shape that's roughly like a potato shape, because you want to make the bird look quite cute. So quite happy with the shape I've created. Alright, now how do I change this thing into a selection area? Yeah, I select all the points, I go to path. Yeah, there's a tab. If you can't find this tab, where you can find it is go to window, go to path, and this should appear, and then select and click on this third one, load path as selection. So click on this third one and you see the running ants are appearing. So I mean, this kind of shape you can't get with either of these tools because it's quite specific, it's very smooth, so you have to use the pen tool to get it. Okay, so go back to layer, the robin layer, and fill it with a color. Alright, temporarily I will fill it with a kind of probably a base light brown color, but let's just Control D to deselect the shape. Now let's just have a look at what color we want to actually fill the robin with. And this is now where we actually bring in a reference. I quite like this picture. One way you can bring a reference into Photoshop is simply clicking and dragging it in. Now it will appear very large with an X like that. So all you need to do is hold down the shift key and scale it down. If you don't hold down the shift key, the shape might go, which you don't want. So hold down the shift key and bring the size of the photograph down. So that's roughly probably about the same size as your character. Yeah, put it next to it and lock this layer so that you don't end up drawing here and having waste some time drawing and end up deleting it later on. So make sure that your layers are properly segmented. Be as organized as possible, don't make excuses. Okay, now so you might be asking, what's the base color you should have for your robin? Usually I try to put a base color that is quite neutral, quite earthy. Though you see a lot of red here, I would not put the red, because for me the red is a pattern, and if you look at the entire bird, the red is actually quite a specific area. There's more brown and ash color. That's why I chose that color. Yeah. Well, for the kingfisher was different. I chose more orange or blue because it's quite even. There is not much ash color, so I chose either one. I would choose either one. Okay, so coming back to the robin, I choose a color that is close to brown ish. Probably I'll just lock the alpha, color pick, probably from here. Yeah. Okay, fill it with that. Oh, I think that's a bit dark. Lighten it, something like that. Okay, and then I'm going to start putting in the texture. What's the texture on the robin? This blue band that you see, and also all this red area. And you notice you have to just try and take note of how the pattern goes around the bird. Yeah, it goes around the eye, side of the face, comes down to the chest, and you notice there's a little indent in the center of the chest. These are things that you are able to observe through photographs, and that's why it's important to work with photographs. Look at this little dent. It gives some sort of a distinct feature to the character of the bird. It makes it more believable, it makes it more identifiable, more real. Right? That's why I always encourage you to always work with photographs. Now, let's start with the orange. Orange which is the orange that I'm going to pick, the darker orange or the lighter orange, or somewhere in the middle. It's quite obvious I'm going to use somewhere in the middle, because if I choose something too dark and I want to lighten the color, I have to go a long way. If I chose the mid orange, then I can go lighter or darker without much effort lah. Okay, so I'm going to choose a brush that has already a little bit of texture, because you know the feather already has texture. My apologies, I'm actually splitting my recording of this tutorial in two. So one was yesterday morning and this morning, and I have a little bit of a runny nose, so okay, change it to normal. Okay, make sure it's not on color dodge. Oops, sorry. So I noticed the texture, let me put to full. It goes around the eye area and the sides, yeah. You can even outline the area that you might want to paint, so that you can paint in the color in the center. Color pick. Okay, so there's some white going on, and this blue, it looks blue, but it's actually grayish. So, but I really want the blue to come out, so I may cheat a little bit, alter the color here on my palette, and but I always go here to pick the color first, so that if I were to cheat in any sense, I know how much I'm cheating. Like here, I'm actually bumping it up to a blue, yeah, so that it's not too different. Yeah, if you start changing all over the place, then you will probably realize that the color may not be very accurate. Okay, so okay, I think the blue doesn't go all the way back. Yes, the different degrees of it. Yeah, it's just a fringe over the cap, so maybe I have to replace it back. Alright, so yeah, this kind of little details you should need to observe, because it makes your painting all the more believable. Yeah, it makes it more like a robin. So in case some robin experts kind of happen to see your, not that there are a lot, but I mean there are people who actually would have a view of your work, they might really appreciate it. So sometimes you may be making your art just for that one small group of people, but if they are able to appreciate the experts of this animal that you're painting, then I think you have done a really, really good job. Yeah, if they can appreciate it, then everyone else can. Alright. Okay, so I think the texture is quite done. I'm quite happy with the texture that I have. Now, what we do next, okay, like the branch, we're going to now paint in the shadow. So I'm going to start with not a texture brush, a generally soft brush, just to create the general shadow. What color am I going to use? Of course, a green. Probably not such a saturated green, slightly desaturated, because I don't want it to look too green on the robin. Increase the brush size, lower the opacity, bring it down to multiply, put on the opacity with pressure tool, and then kind of create the core shadow of the body. I know that the shape is gonna go up like this, right? It curves up like this, so the face would get the sun quite a bit. So I'm not gonna get much on the bottom. Yeah. So the core shadow would be around here where the wing is, because you must understand the belly might get a bit of sun from the branch. The branch might reflect back some light, kind of like here. So you see the darkest area is around the chest. On this photograph, it's around the chest area. Okay, the back, because you have the scarf covering the head, and I think you're done. Yeah. Now I'm gonna just add in some features on the face. I want some puffy cheeks, so if they're gonna bulge here and here, these two, I'm just gonna imagine two little bulges here. I'm thinking that maybe I'm gonna add a little bit of a cheek here, a little bit of a cheek here, and if I'm gonna indent the eyes in, I'm gonna have some shadow over there, over there, and underneath the beak. Right, actually it's in the wrong direction, the shadow. If the beak is coming out here, light here, it will cast the shadow here, I think. Yeah, oops, a bit too long. Alright, okay, so we are quite happy. Probably just do a bit for the scarf first, but I won't paint too much yet. A bit for the wing. I think we're okay. We're done with the shadow. Now, let's move on to creating the highlights. Yeah. I'm gonna start using a color dodge. Right. Choose this lime green. Alter it to be a slight yellow, because that's the color of the sun. I'm not gonna use too bright a yellow. Okay, because if too bright a yellow might give too extreme a lightening of the face. So if I darken it, I have more control. Yeah, so color dodge. Okay, let's go back. Oops, over the face area, the head, right, the face, the cheeks especially, because we kind of, and then the chest, because we see this area here. Okay, not too much. I think there's a bit too much overexposure going on, and I think we're done. Yeah, very little. I wouldn't have any main light here because it's facing downwards, so I'm going to start painting the bounce light. So bounce light here. I think I'm using a bit too much of the smooth brush, so now at this point of time I'm going to change to a textured brush. Yeah, something like that, so that it gives my coloring a little bit more texture. I think I may have lightened this area too much. I'm going to add in back some shadows. So sometimes I would like to pick back an orange, yeah, just to give it, just to warm up the face again, yeah, just to give it back some color. You can use multiply to give it back some color. The other way is to use the color itself, but I really want to just darken it. Just now it was a bit too light, so I could use multiply. Okay, how to know what each transparency does is really, I would say, experiment with it, play with it more. Okay. Alright, so we're done. Now we've got the 3D form. It has quite a three-dimensional form. The next thing I want to do is the face. Yeah, creating the beak and the eyes. So we go and take a solid brush because it's a solid shape. So I'm gonna pick the gray because that's the original color of the beak. Put it down to 100, normal. And so I've done the beak, maybe the eyes now. Okay, alright, so take a soft brush, create the shadow. Oops, I did not lock the alpha for the eye when I started painting it. Lock. Okay, and then highlights. Alright, Now, see, now I'm going to introduce something to you. I've zoomed in way too close. And I don't know what it looks like on the overall. Every time you're doing a painting like this, it's always important to see how it looks like overall, okay? Because you could be painting a lot of details and not know what is happening, and if your details even matter on the big screen. Alright, so it's important to do this. Go to Window, Arrange, New Window for Robin Tutorial. Now take this out. So now you in Photoshop you have two windows called Robin Tutorial. Take this out, or we scale it down, and look at what you are painting as well here. Because if you're making details that you can't even see on this, then it's no point. You're wasting your time. Okay, you could have spent half an hour painting the beak, but the beak is like a smidgen, a small part of this whole bird, which was already a small thing on this whole painting, right? So if that doesn't really come out, then you're wasting your time. So always have this window to check yourself. Okay, I'm going to switch off the sketch so that I can see what I'm painting more clearly. Alright, so I'm going to change this to color dodge. I'm going to create highlights, right? So we'll create the main highlight here on the eye. Okay, so you see it has just come up here, the white, the highlight. Okay, here as well. I don't think I'll be able to see as much of it at the bottom. Yeah, so you see this little thing, it looks nice here, but it barely shows up here. Maybe around here. Well, you could see a little bit of it, so maybe it's alright. And then lower it down for the top part of the beak. Yeah, it seems more shiny at the tip based on the photograph. Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm quite fine with the features now. It seems that I need to, because it looks like the features are sticking out from the body in the sense that it's not blending very well. So what I'm going to do is go back to the Robin layer. I'm going to increase more of the shadow. So that it looks like it's really indented. Yeah. Why do I know to paint a shadow here? Because if it's indented here, the light is coming from here, so it will cast a shadow right over the eye area there. Alright? And of course, right under the mouth. Oops, a bit too dark. Yeah. Oops. Okay, and then I'm gonna add some highlight, color dodge. Oops, a bit too much. Lower this opacity. Okay, so oops, you see, when I do this, it seems fine here, but when I look at this, you see it's a bit too sharp and I don't quite like it, so I'm going to go back. So that's why I'm saying that it's always important to have this as a check. Okay. Alright. We're done. Alright, so the next thing we're gonna do is add in some details, the final bit. Right, now the details I'm going to do is the little things that look like feathers. Yeah. Now if you observe a robin's photograph, I'm going to create a new layer and show you what I've observed. It's the way the feathers are laid out. See, if you don't have a photograph and when you're painting without research and just out of memory, you will not be able to pick these things up. Notice how the feathers are laid out. See, there's this area here and it looks like it's coming from the face. It seems that the feathers are all radiating or emerging from the face. See the strokes of the feathers, right? Yeah, it's all coming from the face. In a way, the lines are leading it back to the face. So it's a very nice design, you know, nature offers. And the other thing is, observe how each feather kind of overlaps each other. If you look at the edges of the feather, the highlights, notice there's one here, one here, one here, almost as if they're like fish scales, right? So these are things that you can't get just out of memory and trying to paint out of memory. You have to look and analyze the photograph. That's what I'm telling you guys to always do. Look and analyze and observe, right? And you have to go up close, you have to download the image. You can't look at the image just online and just draw out of memory. You will not get that, right? So when you say you have done your research, I would want you to actually look at the photograph and actually go to this kind of level of detail. Now, let's go back to this robin and try and recreate that kind of pattern. Alright, I'm going to create use a solid brush, make it small because we're doing little details, color dodge with probably a yellow and see how it turns out. Oh, that's too much, probably because the opacity is too high. Little higher perhaps. So we want to make small little dashes that are random. You don't want to create dashes that are too regular. When I say regular, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4. Then this is too stylized. See, doesn't look very nice compared to this one, right? Oops, let's go back. Okay, so you want it to be a little bit more random. So I'm trying to recreate that fish scale pattern where it kind of overlaps each other. Well, I shouldn't be painting so much here because actually the scarf is going to be covering it. I should be painting more down here below the scarf. Okay. The marks are not coming out as much as what I like, because my Wacom's tip is very loose. So it's a bit old. It's been with me for more than 8-10 years, I think. Yeah. So okay, so I've done that. Gets a little bit irregular at the bottom, I think. Yeah, so the top few you might find that and if you observe, it radiates from the face. So you've got some that are kind of around the eye, yeah, some around the beak, very lightly dabbing it. See, every time I paint something, I'll just check here if it looks okay. So these little lines actually help lead our attention back to the face, right? Okay, so I think maybe a little bit longer strokes down here. Alright, now what I'm going to do next is also try and I think a little bit of detail down here would be nice. Yeah. Okay, notice that at the tip there are the highlights, yeah, and then there are little corners of shadows that, you know, separate the highlights and the shadows. So I'm just gonna go in here, this area here and this area, and recreate those shadows with a texture brush. Alright, you can choose a brown to multiply mode, lower it, and just a bit too much. Just give these overlapping parts a little bit of shadow. Yeah, just a little bit, not too much, just a little bit to separate the feathers apart. See? Yeah, so that you have that. See? It looks like individual feathers now. Alright, so the bottom bit you can make longer ones, because I noticed they had kind of longish kind of fur. You know, a bird doesn't have the same type of feathers throughout the body. They are all different types. The wings have different feathers, the body is covered with a different set of feathers. Yeah, It's like the hairs on your head, right? You have different guys. You might have different hairs on your chest, or your face, or your hair, or at the edge of your fingers. They are a bit more fine. So it's the same thing with the bird. The ones that are used to fly, like the wings and the tail, they are more solid. They are larger. The ones on the body are a bit lighter to keep the bird warm. So there are different purposes. Okay, so you have to observe those kind of things, right? Okay, so I think we're done with the main part of the body, and now I'm going to move on to I want to soften up the beak a little bit. So I'm just going to take the eraser, go to the beak layer, switch off the alpha, and just lightly erase it with this brush so that it looks like it's got feathers overlapping it. Alright, there, done. Now, I'm gonna flatten this down and rename this Robin. How do you flatten the layers? Sorry, let's go again. Select this one, which is the face, right? See, without the face, with the face. Select the Robin, Control E, that would flatten it. Rename it as Robin. And I'm gonna create a new layer. I'm going to use the same tool which I created the Robin to do the scarf. Alright, so I'm going to go up here, all the way up there, and then back again. Maybe around here. Here. Okay, then adjust it with the direct selection tool. Okay. Sorry if there are some tools that you weren't familiar with and I just picked it out. Probably it'd be a good idea to just rewind the video and check where I picked. I may have skipped it, I'm sorry. Yeah, but just rewind and see where I picked it out. I mean, whenever other artists do that, I just kind of rewind their tutorial and just have a look again, because sometimes they might assume that you already know because they have been painting for quite a while. So okay, I'm quite happy with the shape on this side. Now I'm going to go to this side to create the other side of the scarf. On the same layer, you do not need to create it on the new layer, because we are essentially drawing the front of the scarf. Okay, let's complete the shape. Okay, adjust it again. I'm gonna join this part with this part. Try and seam it together. Okay. Right, this here. Okay. I'm gonna bring the scarf. Okay. Alright, so I'm quite happy with that. Gonna merge this area as well. Okay, so again, select everything. Go to path, third circle from the left. Click this one, and you see it fills it up completely. Now the scarf color, I think a beige color would be nice. It's probably like, I want to envision it to be like an old piece of cloth, simple white piece of cloth that has aged. So I'm gonna fill it up with that color. Okay, Control D, check your work. Seems to leave a gap there where it overlaps, so you can paint that in. Oops, sorry, B. Normal, 100. Okay, just paint that back in, so you've got the front part of the scarf, right? Now the next portion that we're gonna do is the back. So you don't do the back on the same layer. Obviously the back of the scarf, we're gonna name this layer front scarf. Create a new layer behind the robin. underneath the robin, because it is behind the robin, hence underneath the layer of the robin, back scarf. Okay, back scarf. So create this one because there is no outline really that you need to follow, because you're just creating a shape behind the head. So close this up, select it, and then create path, layer, fill it with the same color of the front scarf but darker, and then just fill it up. Alright, so you're done. So you can switch off your sketch and you can see your work. Alright, so you've got a scarf over. Now I'm going to do the fold. If you look at the, I want this kind of fold. I've downloaded it, so it's just, you know, it comes in. I think it just folds over and folds to the back. So it's a simple fold, it's not a knot. So I'm just going to imagine the front of the scarf, paint it with a solid. Yeah. It's just going to fold over like this. It's going to fold over. And then oops, okay, I think I have kind of changed the sketch a little bit, but it's okay, small details, so you can just play by ear. And then another one this side, so yeah, probably one longer than the other, just to give it some rhythm. Yeah, okay, use an E to clean it up, to erase the parts I don't want. Alright, yeah, so like some wind kind of going there. And then I'm going to create the lace pattern which I found on this scarf. So I noticed a kind of like an overlapping pattern. I'm not going to do that much of detail. I'm just going to do a simple one. So basically the shape of the overlapping lace inspired me to do something like this. Yeah. So as it comes round, of course, the lace, it's narrower here. Oops, sorry. And it should increase in size as it comes round to the front. Yeah, so you have to be very conscious of that kind of form, right? So this part as well gets narrower quickly. Same thing, so tip to tip, tip to tip as well. And then the final bit with a bit of a little design at the end. So, alright, here as well. So we're happy with the, see the details. Alright, so I'm quite satisfied with what I have. Now let's paint the shadow. Okay, because it's on separate layers, so we're going to paint the front bit first. I'm going to use a textured brush because we want to create the illusion of fabric. Yeah, so going to choose multiply, maybe a green shadow, desaturated, and oops, lower the brush opacity. I'm going to use something like this first, okay, just to give it a general shadow. Alright, something like that. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do, because it's a piece of cloth and it's quite smooth, you don't want to darken it too much. I'm going to use a brush like this to create the folds, because there are folds here that I've not painted yet. I'm going to use the shadow to mark them out. Okay, so based on the picture here, seems like one scarf is in front and the other one behind. So this one is the front one, so as it overlaps there should be a kind of a fold, some folds that goes on here. Yeah. So always check here also, see if it's nice. Okay, got a fold on this side, so this is the one that overlaps and this is the one behind. Okay. So you see, I'm using shadow to create the form of this scarf. Yeah. Sometimes you use a hard brush and to define it some more. Okay. Okay. Alright, I think that's enough of that part. We're gonna do the highlights now, right? So I'm gonna use the same brush, just change color dodge, choose a light orange color, probably not so too bright, yeah, and just create the highlight, because light is gonna come here. I think the edge of the cloth will get it here, and well, definitely here. And then the folds, yeah, you want to separate the shadow here so it looks like there's a crease here, and then here again, right? See? Yeah, when the crease narrows like this, the highlight that you catch is harsher, right? Then over here and then over here, because as it turns, as the cloth turns, this portion catches more light, yeah, and yeah, I think we're good, right? Probably a little bit more here on this side and then this side. Okay, a bit of bounce light, so you might want to pick a green just to color this part up. It's okay. Probably a little bit of detail. Some of the edge of this little lace might be getting it, so you can zoom in and see, does it catch any details? Not much actually. So yeah, I wouldn't waste my time going around it too much. See, so this is why you need to have this window here, so that you know whether it's worth spending your time on it or not. Okay? Alright, so now for the back of the scarf, go to the back layer, paint in the shadow, right? I'm just going to choose a color from here, because I'm not going to choose a green, because, well, the thing reflecting within the scarf is generally the body of the bird, so I'm just going to use the color around it. I'm going to darken it so that, and create that shape, so that the head would seem a little bit more contrasted. Oh, I did not lock the alpha, it's coming out on the sides, so lock the alpha. Yeah, okay, good enough. Now, did not lock the alpha yet. Now, because this is fabric, so sometimes light does seem to seep through a little bit, so you might want to consider that, you know, kind of effect. So color dodge it a little bit to just lighten some parts, because you know, light does permeate fabric like this, right? A bit too much then. Okay, so we're done. I think we're good enough. I think I want to go back and put some shadow in, multiply, because I really want to create a shadow behind to isolate the head, to make sure the head is defined out. Okay, so we're good. I'm quite done with the scarf now. Finally, let's do the legs. Let's add in the legs. I'm going to create a new layer, above the robin, because I'm going to put the legs here. Just check, pick a color from the robin's legs. It's a pink. I'm going to keep the legs really simple, like I'm not going to spend much time on it because it's so teensy. So it's a solid brush that I'm creating it with. Just mark out leg here, comes up to the front. It has one long claw, two short claws. Another side probably comes down here behind the branch and have the talons come over. That's it. I think we're good. Alright, now in order to make the legs seem to blend into the feathers, I'm going to use a brush, a eraser tool, and just kind of use this to give it the illusion that's kind of seeping out from the feathers. Yeah, and then I'm going to lock the alpha for the legs, add the shadow with this brush as well. I like that brush a lot. And then just on multiply mode, sorry. Yeah. Just oops. It's erasing. Make the brush a bit smaller because we're painting small little talons. They're not called toes. They are called talons because, well, they're claws like that. So okay. I think it's good. Maybe add a little bit of highlight because you can see from the photograph there are highlights. So color dodge, pick a light color. I just picked a green. Sometimes I get a little bit lazy when you're painting something so small. Instead of going all the way to the palette, I just kind of hold down my alternate and pick the nearest light color. So you do tend to do that, and it's okay. It's perfectly okay. You look at the result, it's like, oh, you can see now the toes, yeah, probably a bit of the leg, and you're done. And the final touch is the feathers and the tail. We're not going to. I don't want to spend too much time on it because I like the shape already. So those for me, the tail and the wings are just going to be supplementary. So I'm going to just pick the brown off the tail, go to the back of the robin and add feathers, wings if you want to call it. Just kind of go with a solid brush, go like, make sure it's at 100, maybe a bit of opacity, normal. Yeah, like that. Okay. And then go to the front of the robin. Oops, don't forget to name this layer. Well, you can use this legs and wings, right? Unlock the alpha. Just create some wings that come out this side. Oops, okay. It seems that I can't paint on this layer because it looks weird. It needs to look behind, so I'm going to go back to this feathers one and create it there, and we're done. Well, you could add in some details by going back into this and then locking the alpha, adding some shadow in, and because some feathers, they do allow light to go through it slightly, you can do this thing. So it's about how much detail you want to add in, but if you feel that you've got enough details on this bird itself, that should be enough. Alright, so that's about it. Okay, you can now delete your reference. You're quite done with it. Just one more last tip. Okay, if in case you do want to, you don't want a solid shape like that for your bird. Oops. You want to give it a bit of feathers. One tip you can use is using the smudge tool, which is another new tool I'm introducing to you, the smudge tool here. I'm going to use the smudge tool with a hard brush on quite a reasonable strength, probably about above 50. I'm going to go to the robins layer and make it really small so that when I smudge it out, you get like this. So what smudge does is basically like when you're painting with crayons or color pencils, you use your finger, which is why it has this finger thing icon, to smudge out the colors from the area. Now, because it's already stylized, you don't want to smudge out everything. Just be selective with your smudging, okay? And then you could go back with a brush, color dodge, oops, and lock the alpha again. Oops, a bit much. Alright, so you've got little frays of hair which makes it look cute. Alright, so we're done. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Do give the kingfisher a try. I've actually pre-done the kingfisher. Let's see, where is it? Robin final. So I have the kingfisher I've already pre-painted, and I'm just gonna bring it over here to this twig. Oops, behind the twig. Okay, so yep. So we are done. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. You learned something out of it. The concepts of how I paint is basically the same with the kingfisher. I have not used anything new. Whatever you need to know is already in the painting of the robin. One thing important to understand is not to look at my tutorial and follow each and every single step when I'm changing the brush, because you'll find yourself very stressed out trying to figure out what brush I use at this step, The most important thing is trying to understand how each tool functions, and by knowing how each tool functions, then you know when to use it, okay? Rather than memorizing steps, learn and understand how the tool functions, and then you will know when to use it, because that makes it more fluid, okay? Alright, so that brings us to the end of the tutorial. Thank you very much.